What's up, guys? Welcome back to COD Trendy. Here is a guide to every major location in COD Warzone. Number 11, Airport. The airport is usually going to be a bit busy, just like in real life. There's a lot of ground to cover here though, so although there will generally be 2 or 3 teams fighting for control of it, there's so much space, as well as so many levels of verticality, that it can take a little while for the teams to be whittled down to 1. There's going to be quite a lot of loot around here, ranging from the lowest quality to the highest quality, and it's all going to come down to luck when it comes to what you're going to find compared to your opponent. One other thing to keep in mind about the airport is that there's usually a buy station around, making it pretty easy to get an early loadout drop or self-revive kit.
That looks pretty much the same. Please.
Number 10, Superstore. Superstore is a bit smaller than the airport and it's much less multi-level too, making the fights here very quick and very decisive. The early game here is going to be a bloodbath, and if your team doesn't come out on top, you're likely all going to find yourself in the gulag. There isn't much escape here, considering the Superstore is surrounded by a pretty flat terrain and open sight lines, save for one side. Mid to late game, the rooftop of the Superstore can be a pretty solid place to hang out. There are some rooftops around it that are a bit higher up, but there is a plethora of cover to make use of. There are 3 ladders leading to the roof of the building, so if your team has some proximity mines or claymores, it can be pretty easy to keep the rooftop clear.
Like this, or that's pretty much it, honestly. There's not a whole lot else to do with it, so it's not the most practical spot.
Number 9, Dam. The Dam is a location that generally has some pretty decent loot about, but isn't a very big location, so there's not much to go around. In fact, without the helicopter present on the rooftop, there wouldn't really be a lot of reason to drop here. That said, it isn't usually going to be a very busy location. You can usually expect one other team to drop with you there at most. There can also be a buy station here, but it isn't a guarantee.
Thing that we noticed that would disprove this as a submarine is that it has very blocky and pixelated edges.
Number 8, Downtown. Downtown is full of skyscrapers, and you know what that means, rooftop snipers. If downtown happens to be near the center of the circle, it's pretty safe to assume that just about every single rooftop is occupied. Early game, downtown can be a bit of a struggle. Sometimes you'll drop and be completely unable to find a weapon of any worth. And since the loot is scattered throughout the dozens of buildings in the area, you'll have to cross through some dangerous sight lines in order to gear up. Dropping here is a risk. It could go absolutely great, or it could end in a slow and painful death.
Easy recon, which is probably the most useful contract and is extremely quick to finish in solos.
Number 7, Hospital. Hospital is one of the more unique spots to drop in Warzone. There's a lot to the interior of the hospital, and if you end up dropping here, the first few minutes are going to be pretty spooky, as you'll be hearing footsteps constantly and be worried about turning every corner. But there can be quite a lot of loot here, and a good loot at that. While it might be a difficult building to hold and defend, it has a lot of value simply due to its size. Number 6, Quarry. Quarry is going to be a very tricky place, but if you play your cards right, it can be pretty easy to gear up quickly and come out on top of multiple gunfights pretty easily. Landing on the second story of the larger buildings is going to make things a lot easier. There's a ton of good loot up there, and it gives you an immediate height advantage. There are also a bunch of different staircases leading to the second story of most of these buildings, but it's generally pretty easy to hear footsteps and tell which staircase someone is going to come up, allowing you to set an ambush. There is almost always a buy station here too. Number 5, Lumber. Lumber, in essence, feels like a bit of a smaller quarry. It's got buildings of a very similar nature, albeit less of them, and with fewer buildings means a little less loot. It's by no means a bad place to drop though. It's not usually nearly as busy as Quarry, so you're probably not going to have it to fight as hard to grab some of that good loot. This isn't generally going to be in a late game circle, so most of the time it's going to be a good idea to loot and scoot.
Oh shoot, I was late! Oh shoot! I don't know the timing of that! I gotta win it.
Number 4, Farmland. Farmland is a pretty sprawling area with a dense area of houses and barns with some wide open fields around. These fields are, for obvious reasons, not to play. The houses can be a pretty alright spot to hang out. What they lack isn't a ton of high quality loot they make up for in being pretty defensible. This is certainly not going to be the hot spot in the early game, but if you're looking for an easy route into the late game, Farmland might be a good choice.
Pawn Takes Pawn website, and actually, believe it or not, this website is updated with the...
Number 3, Prison. Prison is, 9 times out of 10, going to be a bloodbath. It is a display of complete and utter carnage unseen in many other locations in Warzone, especially in the early game. Want some great loot right off the bat? Drop in the prison. Want to get into a fight with 5 other people at the same time? Drop in the prison. This is a high risk, high reward type scenario, but if you play your cards right, have to keep some of the healthy sightlines from up high, you can come out on top. If not, you can always parachute off the side of the prison with relative safety. Number 2, Port. Port is pretty close to prison, but it is a very different kind of situation. There is usually some pretty good loot scattered about, but there are a ton of sightlands throughout port that can be exploited very easily by somebody looking for them. You're going to want to move carefully around here, and if you plan on staying very long, get yourself a rooftop. That way you can be that person ruining days from a great sightline.
This is the spot right here, dude. I'm telling you.
Number 1, Promenade. Promenade is a super tricky location. A lot of the buildings in this area are a little awkward, with a lot of staircase and not a lot of room. There isn't a ton of potential for rooftop play here because the roofs are mostly slanted, not to mention there are a ton of rooftops not far away that have much more height. There's generally some pretty decent loot to be had at Promenade, as well as a usual buy station, but sometimes it's not worth the effort, and despite how rough it can be dropping or setting up here, it's usually packed with people.
Second, we have passive aggressive. It's very easy to avoid the middle of the map entirely.
This brings us to the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of our videos in the future. Also watch the 2 videos that are on your screen because I'm sure you'll love them. With that, I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.